That's what it is. It's based on Alpine Linux. It has no Android user space stuff in it at all. Sometimes there's devices that come along that do not have like mainline kernel support, and so we have a way to easily boot the downstream vendor kernel from Android on these things, but that's like really the only place you would see something kind of from Android. A lot of projects, especially in like free software land, like to boast about how great their communities are. We're no exception. A big part of who PostmarketOS is the community of people who've shown up to do development work and submit patches, port new devices to the distribution. There's people who like created documentation for us, and that's awesome. There's also like a large number of people on our chat that help other people out who show up, and we have people who generate artwork for us and help us write blog posts and whatnot. So like we would not be as far along as we are today without our community, and yeah, we owe them a lot of thanks and gratitude there.
Can you
yeah,
just quickly say what Alpine Linux is, what its origins are?
Yeah, Alpine Linux is it's a weirdo in terms of distros. It's probably like one of the most widely used distributions on Earth because it's like the basis for so many containers that people build. So a lot of people are using Alpine and they might not even realize it. Like if you're running stuff through Docker or Podman or even like LXC, I think they use those for building containers as well. It has its own, like they don't use glibc like everyone else. They use muscle libc. The user space is based on BusyBox. They like really optimize for a small root file system size because it's used in containers. And then there's some other stuff that I'll get into later on, but yeah, that's generally what it is. It's not based off of like any existing distribution. Yeah. Yes?
It doesn't use systemd, right?
Correct. Yeah, they use OpenRC officially, and then there's like dinit and I think runit is packaged and some other init managers, but yeah, no systemd in the distribution. So like our distro in terms of like how the software stack looks, there's like a number that is represented on this graph here, this diagram. There's like a number of different hardware devices that we support. The more popular ones are things like phones and tablets. That's the one that typically people hear about us running on. People have also ported this distro to smartwatches and TVs and laptops. Like I run it on my laptop and have for a few years. Chromebooks is another area where like people are basically reusing these things that come from schools that no longer get updates from Google, sort of giving them new life with Linux. And on top of that, we like tend to prefer running the mainline kernel when we can. Obviously, a lot of the embedded devices in particular and phones and things like that don't have great mainline kernel support. So we have a way in the distro to, like I mentioned earlier, swap out different kernels. So you can run, excuse me, like the downstream vendor kernel from Android on phone if that's what's required to get functionality going. On top of that, you have Alpine Linux, which is the distro we're based on, and it has like pretty much all software you install in PostmarketOS is coming from Alpine Linux, all the packages and stuff like that. And we do a ton of work in Alpine upstream because we strongly believe in like supporting upstream software when it's something you depend on and not doing stuff downstream and keeping it to yourself just because it's too hard to go upstream or whatever. Yeah, we don't do any of that. we support upstream. Anything else I want to say? Yeah, so on top of that, there's like what I'm referring to as the glue that we do. I'll get into that more later, but it's like configuration and some like same defaults and ways to build images targeting specific devices with like configuration that makes them work out of the box. Alpine is like quite unopinionated in terms of like what they support, like for configuration out of the box. They will give you like OpenRC as an init manager, but they will not install, or like they will not enable services by default or anything like this. And the glue stuff that we do is like enabling services where it makes sense to. So when you build an image for a device with a user interface, you have like everything working as you would expect. We support a number of different user interfaces. I listed some of the more popular ones up there, but there's like at least 12 that we support. And it's easy to add new ones because of how easy it is to package stuff in Alpine. Yeah, I see like endless options there for people who want to create images for specific devices with like a specific user interface for some use case they want to support on that device. And then there's the stuff that users interact with, like their apps and stuff. Right now there's like two primary sources. The first is the Alpine binary repository, which is like the native applications. If you use the package manager in the distro to install something, it's going to come from the Alpine binary repo. And then for some of the user interfaces like GNOME and KDE and Fosh, we enable Flatpak installation by default. So you can have like the software manager application that you would run, like GNOME software or something, can install applications from Flatpak out of the box if you wanted. Some users find that really nice, so we set that up. Yeah, so a little more information about like why we chose Alpine. If you're familiar with Alpine or like any other Linux distros, you might be wondering like why we chose this one and not something like Debian or whatever. I mentioned earlier like the small root file system size that Alpine has. That was honestly like the first reason why the main reason why we chose it initially. And then as we used Alpine more and more, we realized that like the package manager and the packaging format that Alpine uses is really nice. It's if you're familiar with like Arch Linux and the way they do package building, it's very similar. It's like a shell script, and it's quite flexible on how you can like build packages that can like create sub-packages and depend on different things. It basically allows us to do everything that we do in the glue part. That would probably be more difficult, if not impossible, with some of the other packaging formats that we've looked at. Another nice feature of Alpine is the way they do releases. So like PostmarketOS releases follow Alpine releases, which makes sense because it's our base distro. There's something called Alpine Edge, which is kind of like a rolling release where you get updates from the binary repo as packages and updates are merged. It's great for development, not so great if you want a stable system. So they have stable releases like twice a year, every 6 months, that are supported for 2 years. And so our stable releases are based on those. And that combination of having like the rolling release like model along with stable release models that are actually like very tightly coupled is great for us. And yeah, that's a major feature for Alpine that we like. And we really like the Alpine folks. They really like us. As I mentioned before, like quite a few people who do development work on PostmarketOS are also maintainers for Alpine Linux applications and packages and stuff. So there's a lot of like co-mingling going on there, and it's great. Yeah, definitely a benefit. Oops, sorry. This is pop-up that keeps coming up and making it so I can't click the next slide. All right, so a bit about this glue stuff that I mentioned before. That's a terrible term. I should pick something else. Basically, what it is we use the packaging format in Alpine to ship configuration as packages. And what this means, there's like 3 different categories of packages that we provide in the PostmarketOS. The first is the device-specific package, which it basically takes all the configuration that's required for like booting the operating system on a specific device, whether it's a phone or a smartwatch or what have you. and installs all that stuff and gets it configured. And it can include like making sure the right firmware is installed, making sure the right kernel is installed for that device, making sure the right bootloader is installed and configured, anything for audio, because audio is a mess, and anything else that's necessary for like getting all the features, the hardware features of that device working. And we tried to generalize it as much as possible. So like devices that share an SoC might have their own SoC specific package, so we can reuse a lot of that configuration off different devices that also use it, which is great for maintainability. Next we have user interface packages. And what these do is they install a specific user interface. I have like a really terrible example, but this is like the first part of the APK build of a desktop environment I packaged the other week. But what this does is it installs a bunch of UI application or packages for that user interface. And then it goes and maybe installs like default configuration for something. So for instance, we have our own wallpaper, because why not? Somebody made it, it's great. So one of the configuration things it installs is the wallpaper for that desktop environment. It might also configure certain services to start by default, which again, Alpine doesn't do this, so we have to if we want a working system out of the box. And then it might pull in other dependencies as like optional dependencies. For instance, the whole Flatpak thing I mentioned before. Some people really do not like Flatpak, and that's fine. We pull it in as like an optional dependency, which means as a user, when you build an image and flash it on your device, boot it up, you can remove it, and it's gone. That's it. It's not going to come back. But the user interface package will set that up by default, because we recognize like probably a lot of people do want stuff like that. So yeah, that's basically what that group of packages does. And lastly, there's configuration packages for things like firewall, audio, Firefox, for instance. We have profiles that will like make desktop Firefox usable on a mobile device, which is really great because we don't have like Android Firefox. We don't have access to like their mobile version of Firefox that they ship in Android. So we kind of make the desktop version fit that. And there's a lot of different other things that we provide configuration for in those types of packages. And lastly, another major source of development for us is kernels and bootloaders. A lot of people do kernel development on PostmarketOS. They may not even use the distro for anything except for kernel development. The reason is because it's a really small and easy distro to build. And so they will like iteratively test their kernel patches by building images with PostmarketOS with the kernel changes they made, flash it, boot it, see what works, you know, make more changes, build another image, so forth. And so, yeah, a lot of packages we have are like kernels for many different devices, and then bootloaders, because there's quite a few that are used, especially on ARM-based devices and Android and so forth.
I've got a really dumb question.
Yeah.
Is it possible while you're working with this stuff and you're a newbie that you break your machine and you can't get it back? Or
it depends.
Oh, okay.
Like everything in life, right? No.
Oh,
some hardware is like, I know I'm like
some hardware deserves to be
like
bricked.
Yeah, like some is designed to be bricked and some is like, you know, unbreakable. It's really hard to brick some devices, but it really depends.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the depends sense, there's some place we can go and look and say, oh, don't buy one of those or use it for a doorstop and use this other thing for playing with this.
Yeah, so we have a really extensive wiki. Like one of the criteria for completing a port of a device in PostmarketOS is you have to make a wiki page for it. And a lot of people will put information like that in the wiki that says like, don't do this or you're gonna have a sad time, you know. So I'd say if you have a device, you wanna know like how it's faring, go look at the wiki page for it. Most of the time, the people that added that info will call out any gushes like that.
And so there's enough information there that when you decide you're gonna experiment, you find a $5 device on Craigslist, you can figure out whether it's gonna.
Yeah, or you can even look at we list all the devices on the wiki too, so you can go and see like if any of those are available on eBay or whatever.
My experience is that it's easy to install PostmarketOS, but getting it back to stock Android is
I mean, that also depends too. Like,
Well,
yeah,
it's wonderful.
some
Why
of them
would you
it's
wanna do
fine,
that?
but- Yeah,
So you
right.
can sell it on Craigslist.
That's a feature, right?
You made it better.
Yeah, we don't want you to like regress.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Right, so besides all the packaging stuff I mentioned, what else do we do? I mentioned the wiki. There's a huge wiki with tons of information. Honestly, I don't really even know what's up there anymore because like the community took it and just ran, and they've added tons of useful information.
It's pretty extensive. They really get down into how to install, what kind of packages and everything. It's been, like, I had a, what is it, a Pixel, no, I'm sorry, a OnePlus 6A and 6T, and it was really pretty smooth getting it installed.
Nice.
Just make sure you know it's not like attached like T-Mobile permanently or something, right? You can't connect to a cell phone tower.
Yeah, it gets tricky with Android phones because some of them are locked. Like there's locked bootloaders, and then there's also locked to carrier, which is still a thing in the US, which is really stupid. But yeah, I think that was your problem. Yeah,
I'll get there. I'll fix it eventually.
Yeah, so there's some information.
I didn't get to bring my phone. So.
Oh yeah, I should have.
No, it's still in bootloader stage.
Oh, nice.
I didn't go back to install.
But you do have a card key for the phone company, so you can go ahead and fix it if you have that.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so yeah, I'd like to say all the device wiki pages are like top notch, but some of them, you know, someone may have gotten a device booting once and then like did the bare minimum to get it accepted and moved on. But help wanted, if you have the device and this is interesting and you find new stuff to contribute that helps other people, then that's why it's there. And I'd say it's mostly serving that purpose. So thanks to our community who just, again, took it and ran.
It's a really great community. Like the Matrix channel is constantly streaming with people talking. It's really
Yeah, it's crazy how many people show up that just like, I have no idea who they are, and they just are like helpful. I don't know. It's rare these days, it seems like.
You get a lot of drive-by patches, you tell me, to fix things. Somebody shows up, they got a patch.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing we did to make it easier for the folks in the community to help us is we did a blog post, 2 years ago, almost. Time flies. We did this blog post that was like, hey, we want to create this thing called a testing team. You just have to have hardware and have time. And that's it. And you can help us test patches and releases and stuff. And a lot of people showed up, and we've called on these folks to test before releases. And because like, there's, I don't know, 500 or more devices that we support, and in the stable releases, it's at least 100 now. Like, I don't personally have that many devices, and I hope I never do. Like, my wife would not be too happy.
Back then, no, but online.
Yeah, exactly.
Just do a wall of them.
Right, I mean, it's I might have to get a new desk, we'll put it that way, because my drawers are getting full. But like, I don't have that many devices. Probably nobody does to do all the testing for it, so we kind of like crowdsourced it, and it works. Like, people show up and test, and they file bugs and stuff, and we catch regressions before releases, all due to folks like participating in this testing thing we set up. And then I mentioned earlier, like, we do a lot of upstream work. This is just a screenshot from this mailing list we have, where people who submit kernel patches upstream, so you see this list, and we get a pretty good log of all the work that was done upstream in the kernel using PostmarketOS or for PostmarketOS, or associated. Like I said, some people test using this distro because it's easy to build images and do iterative testing. So when those people send patches, they CC the list, and we can kind of keep an eye on like how much people are using this for upstream kernel work. And on things like SoCs for phones, it's a lot. There's been a lot of upstream kernel work done on and for PostmarketOS on these SoCs from Qualcomm and stuff. which is really great to like enable that, because like I have no idea about the kernel. I'm not a kernel person, but yeah, just to like sort of be involved with helping people that do know what they're doing do the work that's important. It's great. There's that pop up again.
Do you know what's like the most popular device? Like has the most support today?
I'd say.
I mean, but I guess there's many, right? Like there's a
Yeah,
phone
for-
and then there's like a tablet or a laptop.
Yeah, for phones, I'd say probably like the OnePlus 6s and OnePlus 6T like you have, and the Pixel 3a, which is this little guy here, are probably the more popular phones at this point. For laptops and stuff, like I have a ThinkPad, an ARM-based ThinkPad X13S, and quite a few people I've run into in the wild and online and stuff have the same laptop running PostmarketOS, which blew me away because, I don't know, it's awesome. And then we also have like these generic devices where, like there's one for x86, which is like everything, right? But that's the idea, is you can like run this, you can build an image for x86 and put it on your desktop or x86 laptop, which a lot of people do. It's not like targeting any specific brand or anything like that of, you know, x86 processor and or laptop or whatever. Like some people even run it on servers for whatever reason, but it's possible. And so it's hard to say like what the most popular one is for that, because like I don't know how many people are using these generic images, because like you can run it on anything. So yeah.
What's the wackiest thing you've seen it run on?
Probably smart TVs and
You've
routers and
actually
stuff.
seen SmartOS
Yeah,
run on
yeah.
Smart TV?
Yep.
That's
One in, I
that's
think it was in
pretty-
India or something. Actually, I need to look up the brand. It's on the wiki. But
Okay.
yeah, somebody got it running on there and they put Kodi on it, so you can just like boot your TV and it boots straight to Kodi, and I was like, I want that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And some people have gotten it running on routers and stuff, but like, you know, you have OpenWRT, so like, why? But also not gonna stop you.
Because they can.
Yeah. Oh, another crazy thing is there's these little USB LTE Wi-Fi dongles you can buy from like AliExpress and stuff for like $4, and they have little Qualcomm MSM 8916 or something. I probably said that wrong, but people put PostmarketOS on those things, and they plug them in, and it boots up on their laptop, and you have like an instant access point, or I don't know, you can do whatever you want because it's got LTE. So
On the dongle
yeah,
itself?
yeah.
Now I know what my weekend project.
Yeah, they're starting to put processors in dongles now.
Yeah, so you could probably,
Yeah.
like, okay, another crazy thing, sorry, you got me thinking now. Alright, so there's,
People are, minds are already like spinning now.
yeah.
I run it on my car key.
No, that's it, but that's an ARM CPU, like, probably.
So this is how they ran Doom on that Apple HDMI cable.
Possibly, yeah.
They need an operating system for that.
Yeah, so another crazy thing I've seen people run PostmarketOS on is you have the PinePhone, right? Like, I'm sure people have heard of that. In the PinePhone, you have this Qualcomm modem that runs Linux, and so people got PostmarketOS booting on the modem that was in a phone, also running PostmarketOS. So it was like a weird inception thing where you have
Dual
like,
operating system.
yeah, exactly. I don't think there was anything useful you could do with it at that point, but like, I mean,
a
I don't know,
co-processor.
someone was bored and they did it, so.
It's Turing complete, you know what?
Yeah, in some weird way.
It's not like a board engineer.
I wonder if you could use that to replace the like modem firmware, like, and run, you know, so not go blobless with that.
Yeah, I
turning
think the
some-
PinePhone's modem was a special case where it was not signed or something like this. I think on modern Qualcomm stuff, it's like, there's no way. I don't know. This is way outside my expertise, but from what I understand, the Qualcomm chips that come out now are extremely locked down and like, yeah, just you can't mess with anything or it doesn't boot. So, yeah, in this particular case, I think it was just like a super old modem chip that Pine 64 got for this thing, and it just happened to like be unlocked in such a way you can replace the OS. I think the part required for connecting to like cell towers is still locked down.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because of regulations and stuff, but yeah. All right, so we have one tool that kind of does everything. If you want to install PostmarketOS, this is currently still the best way to do it. It's called Bootstrap. It's a tool that does package building. You can use it to build images. People use it to like build kernels and stuff that they're testing. You can use it to create device ports. So if you run it and specify a device that doesn't exist, it will walk you through the process of creating a new port, like filling out all the information and stuff for it. It's used by developers and users for flashing mostly, is what users use it for. We also use it in our build infrastructure and our CI, so like it's used everywhere, and it's critical to like all the development and other work that we do in the distro. In this little code block, I just have like a few examples of how you might use it. If you're running it for the first time, you'd run pbootstrap init, which just walks you through like several options. You select the device that you want to target with the image. You select which user interface. You configure user, like all this other stuff. The next example is if you were like building an image with full disk encryption enabled and sending it to a block device and pre-installing some applications just because you can. And then at the bottom, we basically wrap various mechanisms for flashing devices, for devices that need external tools for flashing. So like for most Android stuff, it's like wrapping fastboot, except like for Samsung, I think it wraps like Heimdall or some other weird thing they use. But the commands are all going to be the same regardless of what device flashing mechanism is, down underneath. But yeah, this is an example like I used for flashing 1+6, which you just send the root file system to the user data partition, and then you send the kernel to the Android boot partition, and that's it. Yeah.
Do you guys do AD image stuff, or you?
Not currently. Yeah, but that's something I'll talk about in a minute.
Gotcha.
It's definitely something we're interested in. Yeah, any questions about this tool before I move on? There were. I will say, like, if you're interested in running this, probably the best way to get it right now is straight from our Git repository, which is kind of a terrible answer, but the reason for that is development's moving pretty fast on this tool right now, and there were some distros that packaged this thing, and we realized they were like way behind, and so it was incompatible with some of the stuff we were doing in our package repository, and causing issues, and people were showing up with problems that we were just like, we fixed this years ago, like what's going on? So for now, like getting it straight from Git, or if you run Alpine Linux, if you're one of the cool people, you can install it from the package repository there, and it'll be up to date because we updated. Like we needed to be up to date there. So.
In terms of up to date, there's up to date for development, and there's up to date.
Yeah.
There's nothing broken that will make me cry. Where are we on that spectrum?
So we follow semantic versioning. So yeah, anything you get that's like a release tag version.
Okay, that's going to be
should be stable.
Yeah. That'll only make us cry a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
So if the package in the repository then is pre-built, ready to install, you're considering that stable, basically. Or
if it's like the latest tag version.
Okay, yeah, but not like from not from Git. Then, so if you're pulling straight from Git,
I mean, you can pull from Git and check out the tag, which is usually what we say to do. Yeah, I mean, you can also run from like the master branch, which again, because we use this in our infrastructure,
it better work.
Yeah, like we actually, like our build system is pulling from Git and using the master branch. So like, if we break that, we're gonna find out really fast and fix it. Yeah, so it's, double-edged sword, but it actually works out pretty nice because we're all pretty responsive in fixing it, and it works out. But yeah, if you want the best time, pull from Git, check out the tag, or install the latest tag version from Alpine if that's what you run. Yeah. All right, so the future. We had a blog post like a week ago where we talked about some of our priorities for this year. And there's like 3 focus areas. The first is reliability, because like if I want to have PostmarketOS on our phone that I give to my daughter many years from now, or like people that I care about that don't want to debug Linux, it's got to be reliable, especially if it's a phone. It's got to make calls, got to receive calls, can't miss any of that stuff, shouldn't crash, all this other, all the other things that people expect from their computing devices. I spent the last 1.5 years porting systemd to PostmarketOS. That's not the same as putting systemd in Alpine. We were running it downstream. And that's, I mean, I know a lot of people have strong opinions about systemd. I am also one of those people, but I recognize the benefits that it provides actually solves some of the problems that we were having trying to like DIY it with OpenRC. And so that's where we are. And it actually gives us like really stable user management and system management features that we didn't have and would have to create from the ground up if we wanted that. We're also gonna look at doing like supporting immutable root file systems, which is the AV stuff you're asking about, like as a part of that. It's still like in the design phase, so like if anyone has any experience doing like immutable root file system stuff on distros, that'd be cool to hear about. Luckily, we're kind of like late to the game, so to speak. A lot of distros have pioneered different ways of doing this, so we can kind of sit back and see how that's working out for them in hindsight. We also need to work on audio and camera support. Audio on phones is hard. There's a lot of different syncs and sources that need to be turned on and off at different times. Like when you get a phone call, you want audio to come from one place, and then when you end the call, you want the audio to then come from like the main speaker and so forth. And having all that routed at the right time and reliably is a challenge, especially on a lot of different hardware that all does different things and have the audio wired up in really weird ways and stuff. Sometimes audio goes through the modem, sometimes it doesn't, I don't know. Then there's also camera support, which like a year ago, there were like basically no Android-based devices that had working camera on Linux. And like now we have at least 3 or 4, if not more, because they all kind of share the same SoC and stuff. So it's improving, but like the quality is not great, and yeah, a lot of work to do there. A lot of features are also missing that people expect on cameras, like autofocus and color balance stuff and all that. So we're gonna focus on trying to get that working and get it working well.
I would say like the camera support, a lot of them is like software supported, right? And that's where the challenge is. Like they got on the OnePlus 6T, they actually got camera working, but it's not it's like there's no zoom or anything like that. It's just it's just a straight picture.
Like pixels are being captured, kind of.
I mean, it's a great first start, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah,
the software.
It's still a potato camera that you can't use really.
But I was very impressed. I took my first picture on an open hardware. That's pretty awesome, right? Because I'm on the GNOME side, so we're already building a lot of mobile apps that do like exercise apps and medicine apps, like remind you. So like we're building that software for all this stuff to make it work, right? So.
Yeah.
What's your guys' audio and video stack? Are you guys using like old Pulse Audio, or are you guys switched to Pipewire for the video stuff? That's
a great question. So currently we default to Pulse Audio because it seems to work on the most hardware. However, I want to change that because Pulse Audio isn't great, and I actually was awarded a grant to work on making Pipewire the default for this distro. And some of that's going to be like trying to figure out why exactly Pipewire isn't working on some device that I don't own and might have to buy or something. But yeah, sorting all that out, and I hope we can drop Pulse Audio and be done with that.
And I think the great thing about moving to that is when you talk about the challenges of improving audio in terms of real time, and it looks like with the jack implementation,
that you would have some of that, right? Because Jack does real-time audio. and
I think so,
such.
yeah. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
not an
so-
audio person. I'm
Yeah,
not
but
the person that gave this grant.
it's what I recall is that there was a lot of skepticism moving to Pipewire, but Pipewire did deliver to that once people started moving to it. But I don't know about the hardware support. Because
Yeah.
I don't remember.
I know, like from what I've heard from people who know what they're doing, Wire Plumber and Pipewire give us a lot of the tools to do the routing stuff appropriately. I just need to go and learn about it and figure out what that actually means and make it work and testing and yeah, all the fun stuff, right? Yeah, does that answer your question?
Are you guys using it for video stuff too? I know that's, I think, what
Yeah.
desktops are using it for now. Or
Yeah, so we
maybe-
actually do ship Pipewire by default for, I think all the user interfaces for video, yeah. But the audio piece, like, we're still, I think when you run PM Bootstrap init, it asks you, like, do you want Pulse Audio or do you want to use Pipewire for audio? And then it will install, like, the Pulse Audio Pipewire compatibility thing if you want Pipewire, and then it defaults to Pulse Audio now because, like, that's just what was first and people know and seems to work mostly for stuff. I think there are some devices that might actually default now to Pipewire audio because it works there and doesn't Pulse Audio, but yeah, it's yeah, getting a little complicated, I guess, answering your question.
Do you know if the Pulse Audio package has been split to the client, so you have the client-side library separate from the daemon itself? Because when you do the compatibility layer with Pipewire, you have the Pipewire-Pulse
Yeah.
thing that runs, but the application still talks to the libpulse, library. So you still have the client libraries for Pulse. So you still actually have to have Pulse Audio installed, unless you split the packages up.
I think it has been. That would have been solved in Alpine. And from what we do not have, like, the Pulse Audio daemon is not installed in that case.
Oh, okay.
So I guess that suggests they split it out. Right?
Okay. I guess yeah.
That's-
If they want it, because otherwise you could have them both installed, and you'd be able to kind of switch back and forth.
Yeah,
if
you can't do
needed to.
that now.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
actually, the packages in Alpine will conflict with each other.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, somebody must have figured it out.
So they went ahead and just kind of
packaging
broke
and-
them apart and then kind of had it one or the other. Okay.
Yeah, like the nice thing about the Alpine folks, again, they optimize for size. So they really, probably too much in some cases, but in this case it's great, but they'll really split things out into sub-packages when they can. So you can you have a lot of control over what gets installed. Yeah, and I think this is one of those cases where they're like, we can just put this thing in a sub-package and then you only get this component if that's what you want, you don't get anything else, so.
Because it does simplify, because having them both installed at the same time can look kind of weird.
Yeah,
It
I mean-
works, but it's like, wait, what am I looking at?
Right, and that's I think I may have actually sent that patch to Alpine, which made it mutually exclusive because of situations like that where somebody would start the wrong audio daemon or it'd start magically, and
Or they both do.
yeah, right. So yeah, when the XCG auto starts, yeah. So yeah, I think we basically prevent that from happening entirely.
Cool.
How'd the system deport go?
It looks like it's still in progress.
It's still in progress. Let me try to summarize, I guess, because I don't know how much, you don't want to be here all night, right?
We're 3 months in, it looks like, according to the article here on the website. It says that was, as of January this year, they merged it in.
Yeah, that's when it was merged. But
So-
work started on it
Oh, okay.
after FOSDEM in 2024. That's when I started working on. A lot of people did some proof of concept stuff, like getting systemd building with muscle, which is a challenge, and it's still a challenge because there's a lot of glibc-isms that are in systemd, and I presented, a colleague of mine and I presented about PostmarketOS in All Systems Go in Germany in October, which is the big systemd event, and we talked about some of the challenges of doing systemd on muscle, and Leonard was sitting in the front row and he dropped the F-bomb and stuff when talking about muscle. It's fine, but there were strong opinions in the room about what we were doing. But we have talked to the people who maintain Muscle. I haven't, but other people in the project have. We've talked to Leonard many times. They're both like willing to work with us on something. I'm not exactly sure like how that's going to get resolved, whether we create a shim or something that runs like that systemd can call into that kind of mimics the glibc stuff. I don't know, that's all like beyond me. I've been mostly working on like the integration stuff, so making sure we understand how to configure services for starting by default. That's something we really need working reliably. Like for us, features and services are like basically the same thing. So like if you don't have modem managers starting correctly, you don't have a modem, right? And that's a pretty major feature for a phone. And there's a lot of other examples, but I had to basically tear apart Fedora and other distros to figure out how they were doing this. And then create patches for some stuff in Alpine to support this, because they don't have any support for like dealing with some of the paths and stuff that systemd have. For instance, again, because Alpine optimizes for size, they have subpackages for like OpenRC. And what that means is when you have a package that's building an application that provides like OpenRC run scripts, it will make an OpenRC subpackage, put those run scripts in there. So when you install the full thing, like the main application, you don't get the run scripts unless you have OpenRC installed. So we wanted something like this for systemd. And that's what I'm currently working on, is like getting all the stuff that we created downstream for that upstream into their build system, so that works. Other than that, I think it's going pretty well. Like, I've been running systemd on PostmarketOS on my laptop since like middle of last year. And like the phones and stuff that I build images for now are all running systemd with PostmarketOS. And I'd say like, it's at least in terms of usability, at least on par with what we had with OpenRC, if not better, because now we have like logging and core dumps and stuff that we didn't have before.
Boot map.
What's that?
Boot map.
Yeah, like you could do boot analyze. You can like you can have C groups for processes and like have memory management of those C groups and have, yeah, it's amazing. I don't know. It has a lot of features that we're still trying to figure out. But I'd say overall it's going pretty well, and I think the next stable release of PostmarketOS, which is going to be like in June, we'll probably have systemd options for images, so people can actually install it and play around with it. I mean, you can install it today using an edge-based image, which is the rolling release thing, but having it in a stable release would be really nice. Yeah, we also talked about changing our name on our blog, because we realized like maybe PostmarketOS is not the greatest name. It's kind of a handful to say, especially if you don't speak English as a first language. What's that?
POS?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. So like we created a forum on the internet that people can send suggestions, and
That always goes
us.
right. But here's the thing, it's actually not as bad as we feared. I'd say like probably 80% of the suggestions like people actually put thought into.
Yeah.
Like maybe 10% is like people sending PostmarketOS again, because it's like, yeah, okay. And then there's like, you know, the other 10% is trolls who are quite obviously just, yeah, screwing with us. But
what's the best one you've heard so far?
I can't tell you. Actually, I have to go back and look at them again. Yeah. I would say like none of the one, I haven't looked at it. Okay, so we did the post like maybe a month ago, and then I looked at it the week after, and haven't really looked at it again other than just like scanning. And yeah, I didn't, at the time I didn't really see any that I liked a lot, but you know, naming stuff is hard.
It is, and there's a penalty for switching too.
There
so
is.
It has to be
so,
substantially better than what you got, or it's not worth it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then if you do it more than once, you really confuse people. So like, yeah, we have one shot. We're not going to do it unless like a really nice name comes along that we like and can switch to. But yeah, if you have a suggestion, there's a form on the blog post I have the blog URL there. It talks about it, and you can go and visit the forum and send as many names.
OSEOS space.
What's that?
OSEOS space.
Yeah, I think there was one of those, so like, someone beat you to it, sorry.
I'll just go vote for it.
Yeah.
Could have been him.
Yeah, maybe. Did you do it? So you can do it anonymously, which, you know, again, asking for anonymous feedback on the internet, you know, very dicey.
That's not me, you know.
Yeah, so if you're interested in the project, follow the blog if you don't want the flood of information that we get. Like, we also have, yeah, there's another site with more info. We're on Mastodon. You can get a lot of information there. We post updates and boost stuff that people in the community are doing. That's awesome. You can follow our blog using RSS or Atom, and it's we announced major stuff we're working on. We just did a post where we talked about our current financial situation. So we try to be like really transparent. All of our financial stuff is public. You can see exactly what we spend money on and where it goes and so forth, and who's donating and all that, which I think is very important for establishing honesty. There's information about like how we structured the project and our governance on our website. And then I linked the device page on the wiki because that's the most popular one. Usually people are like, you know, I have this thing in my drawer, can I run this distro on it? And that's the place you would start to answer that question.
You have an IRC channel?
We bridge, well, we have a matrix thing, and then we bridge IRC to it, so you can get to it from
Is that
IRC.
Libera chat?
Yeah.
Libera-
No, wait, maybe it's OFTC. I have to check. It's on the wiki.
It's on the wiki.
Yeah, there's like a.
Everything's on the wiki.
Yeah, there's like a page that talks about all the ways you can like reach our chat stuff, and
Yeah.
we have different channels for different topics. And, yeah.
Curious in your development process, are you, like, if you're doing apps for the device, is there a VM setup to be able to do like different size devices and test your apps on those, where you're just all on your laptop or whatever? And then when you're doing hardware, you have to have like your device plugged into the thing and you're loading the new image onto restart the phone or whatever, or how's that workflow go?
We have all the options, I guess.
Right.
Using our PM Bootstrap tool, it's really easy to like spin up a VM with an image running whatever user interface you want, and you can SSH to it or connect over to Serial Console or whatever, and do
Does that have
development
like
work.
hardware quirks that are built into the VM?
No,
or just
so-
like maybe size, shape of the.
Yeah, like the way I've used it, I'm not an application developer, but like if I want to test that a user application is being scaled correctly, I'll just resize the like SDL window thing, or I think it's GTK2 or something that Kimi uses. I'll just resize it, and then the UI will usually resize the desktop, and then you can see if the thing is adaptive or not. Cause
Okay,
it
you
will
don't even have to
usually-
restart for that.
Yeah. It's easy also, like, when you build images for devices, like development images, basically using PM Bootstrap, then we have SSH enabled by default on even phones, and you can connect to them over USB, and it will set up a network connection. You can SSH straight to it, and you can use all your standard whatever, like VNC or whatever the cool kids are using with Wayland. Yeah, to run stuff remotely and debug.
So you can just pull like an image of that onto your desktop and click on that, like.
Yeah, like
from
if you set up some remote desktop thingy, yeah, you can do it like that. Yeah, or you can like actually just use the device and it's right in front of you and see how it works. But like one nice thing about that workflow using PM Bootstrap and the USB networking is you can make changes in the source code directory for your application. If it has a package file, like for building it in Alpine, you can then tell PM Bootstrap to build that package using that source directory that you're modifying in real time or whatever. It will build it, and then there's a subcommand of PM Bootstrap called sideload, which will send it straight to the device after it's built it, and then you can run it and see if it works. So you can like really iterate on stuff that way, and that's one way that I've like tested a lot of patches in the past, but I've seen people who do application development use that same workflow. They just like build from their local source directory, send it to a device that's over USB.
Now, with the hardware testing that you mentioned, is there any automation for that, for different devices of hardware, or?
Yeah, I guess I didn't talk about that, sorry. Yeah, one of the things that we're gonna focus on, like right now is setting up a hardware testing infrastructure, which is automated testing on real phones and stuff that we care about. And so we're spending money and resources on this thing. There's like a...
Well, it kind of exists already, you know, you got undo stacks and editors and things.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds very like
Yeah.
application specific.
Yeah,
If there's anything in the OS that we can do to like make that easy and...
It's Windows recall is what that is.
Well,
So
not
take
that
a-
easy.
it takes a screenshot every 5
Are you
seconds, that'll
gonna
tell you.
just Talk to an LLM, they'll just tell you.
It'll tell you what you did 5 minutes ago.
Sorry, I don't mean to offend
We look at the time.
Time to go.
It's a little difficult
Can
to
of worms has
click
been
a
opened.
button in a lot of applications.
Yeah.
I think if you push the button, then it's activating whatever thing is like send this to the whatever. What do you think if you had like your
Well, you
hardware-
can hit the button, it sends a, I'm sorry, that was a mistake, but no, in general, you're building, whenever you're working with something, you're building an information trail.
Right, what do you think if you had like the hardware buttons as an okay, not okay, confirm kind of thing?
Well,
volume button, say?
usually you're 3 or 4 steps down the road, and you realize, oh, I made a mistake back there.
Or you want to unclick 5 buttons?
I like with VI, I can do infinite
Right,
undo.
rewind.
He wants to be able to take a state and
147,
then move back
147.
each state until
Right.
the last.
And you know, in some user
Like VI
understandable
does,
way, so, you know, they've got a representation in their head, you've got a representation in the machine, they don't match. If you're making mistakes, they don't match. And so what you want to do is think, and again, this is maybe a more UI thing, but you want to support the UI people in the sense that if you have this divergence between what the user wants and what the machine interprets of what you did, and if you have a divergence, you want to be able to back out to the divergence. And at some point, you know, you might be working with certain users that have agreed to the surveillance, as it were, to say, oh, here's a mistake that people make a lot, or here's a mistake that this class of users makes a lot. And we're not going to blame the users, we're going to say, we're going to serve those people with something where what we design and what they're capable of doing converge.
Well, what you're describing is basically the core concept of Windows recall, just no one likes their implementation.
Yeah,
Where it's
well,
watching everything you do. and
I
then
wouldn't
roll back
know
and-
about Windows, I haven't
Yeah,
run it
well,
for
it's
40 years.
it's just a system where it just watches everything you do, and then it can recall that on demand. So if you want to
Okay.
know what you did 5 minutes ago, but the idea there is once you have that information, then you could theoretically do what you're
Right.
describing. But there's a lot of issues with getting that. Implementing that is a very higher level application space kind of thing, and it creates all kinds of nightmarish situations.
Commit the
So
whole
it's-
event stack and
Yeah.
then just replay it from scratch.
Right.
basically,
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see something like a Qt or desktop application having just an are you sure mode that.
Well, no, it
is
isn't a
like
matter of are
every-
you sure, because it's a multi-step, you start, you're walking to
I think
Starbucks.
maybe we're starting to
In-
diverge from.
Yeah,
Into,
if anything I can do in
in-person
OS to
engineering.
like help you with this, then I
Yeah.
can do that, but
Yeah.
everything else is, it's like application or
Messing with
higher.
the time-space continuum.
Well, no, it's like I decide that I'm walking to the hardware store and I find I'm walking to the grocery store, I gotta back up and, you know, go onto the path to the hardware store.
Yep.
But I don't know what I'm doing.
I'll send you a quote for that feature. I'll build it on top of PostmarketOS.
Okay.
Have you guys started using Wayland at all? How's that worked out for
Yeah.
mobile stuff?
Yeah, like most of the user interfaces we support are using Wayland. Like GNOME, we use Wayland by default. KD Plasma uses Wayland. Even we have one user interface called SXMO, which is like someone took originally it's DWM, a tiling window manager, and made it work on phones. You can control with gestures and buttons and stuff. It's super cool. I would run it if like my wife didn't have to use my phone. I love it. It's like right in my alley. But that is also now using Sway, which is Wayland window manager. Yeah, I don't like. There's XFCE, which is still using X11, and maybe a couple others. But yeah, I'd say for the most part we're using Wayland stuff, and it's fine.
Did that solve some problems you guys were having with previous X11 sessions, or just kind of whatever the upstream was doing, it works?
Yeah, we kind of just rolled with whatever upstream recommended. Like one of the things that, like we have a lot of work to do, and we try not to get too distracted with like being too opinionated about what we think upstream should be doing. Like if we want to run the GNOME desktop environment, we're just gonna run it as close to how they want us to as possible. And that way, like when there's issues, we can just go to them and be like, hey, we're doing this thing you said to do, it doesn't work, like here's a bug, right? When you start to diverge from that, then you sort of assume a lot of the responsibility for that diverging behavior. And like, I don't wanna spend time on that. I don't think anyone else working on PostmarketOS wants to. Like most of us are also like not application developers working on apps for the same reason. Like people who know what they're doing are doing that stuff. So we're just trying to get it to work as well as we can on as many devices as we can so people can use it. Yeah, so like we might have personal opinions about Wayland versus X11, but we just try to roll with like what upstream recommends.
How many devices do you have in your desk? And do you have to pick them up, or do you have them in some kind of stand?
They're in drawers.
Drawers.
I have 3 desk drawers, and I need to get more.
Are they all like wired up still in the drawers?
No,
Are the batteries swelling on any of them?
you know, like every like few months I cross my fingers and like get the fire extinguisher.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna say. Fire
So far, no spicy pillows. You know.
We'll build you a roulette wheel with all the devices around you. Spin it too.
Yeah.
There are these fire suppressant block things that when they get hot, they melt and foam up.
Yeah, that's something I should probably do.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't know, at any one time I probably have 4 or 5 devices on my desk, like on the desktop that are hooked up for testing or whatever I'm doing. Yeah, I have a problem, and probably not gonna get better anytime soon.
How do you decide which devices to take a look at and see if you can get the operating system to work on them? Is it random? You know?
Yeah, it kind of is, because a lot of people working on this are volunteers. We have a hard time of being like, you work on this device.
Yeah.
We've talked about like purchasing devices for people that want to work on those devices. I don't think we've actually done that beyond like maybe 1 or 2 for ourselves, because we realized like, hey, this device is really popular, we should maybe test a little more. But generally, so far, it's people who just want to work on it. And we try to help them as much as we can, like when they have problems porting devices or whatever. Yeah. We've also talked about maybe focusing on like a particular device and buying a bunch of them for developers and trying to like make it work really well. And we're also like hoping maybe one day in the future that we can get like an OEM who shares some of the same values. There are some out there, but not many. But partnering with one of them to like create a device that ships PostmarketOS out of the box and like actually have access to hardware engineers to.
Well, then you definitely need to change the name.
Yeah, right. So like, I mean, yeah, like that's already been violated. So the Fairphone 5 had support in PostmarketOS before launch because one of the core contributors of PostmarketOS is a Fairphone employee who was working on upstream kernel support for that device using PostmarketOS because it was better than Android for that development work. And I mean, by virtue of him doing his job, it was supported on day 1, like when it launched. So it was no longer PostmarketOS that day. It was like, you know.
Are there others that you have like more intimate connections with vendors?
We've talked to, like, a few years ago, we like unofficially partnered with Pine64.
Right.
They actually sold some Pine phones with PostmarketOS on them from the factory. We don't really interact with them too much more these days. We've talked to other folks like Shift phones, or I think they're just called Shift, but they have some really nice phones that currently run Android, but they're like pretty repairable and just really high quality devices. Unfortunately, they're like only sold in Europe and Germany and stuff, but yeah, it would be really nice if someone like them are interested in having this and we can work with them to make it happen. That's the longer term dream, but I feel like, yeah, we need to have like an immutable root file system and stuff for people that want to use this as a phone, because like running a package manager on your phone is only for the brave.
So where are people, like developer people in the, part of the core, whatever team distributed in the world? Are they in the US, or are they a bunch of Germans? Or,
yeah, quite a lot of Germans.
Germany, yeah.
So the way we're structured, there's the core team, which there's 7 of us, and of them, there's people in the Netherlands, Germany, and me in the US all by myself.
Yeah.
Then we have like below that the trusted contributors, which there's, gosh, I don't even know how many there are now, maybe 20, somewhere close to there. And there are some people in the US that are trusted contributors. There's also people like all over the world that are there that have the ability to like approve and merge and stuff. Yeah.
So, in the terms of like device management, there is, I know for various models of phone, there is like mass, what do you call it? Provisioning hardware for that, so you can have them all set up.
MDM?
For physically interacting with them. So you can have racks of them that are all plugged in, that have connections that you can go push tools that will interact with all of them at once.
Huh, what is
So
that called?
And you could do something like that with like, and you said your SSH is open, you do a collection of phones that have people who can schedule time to remote access them too.
Oh, yeah.
Through the development cycle. So you're keeping your hardware costs down, but keeping an option open for more of the developers at the same time.
Yeah, in other careers I've had, we had a similar setup with mobile embedded systems where like people get lab time on a system that's remote, and yeah, that's interesting. So can you actually like control power and stuff from this system as well for those devices?
I think for some of them, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Also, this will require an electrical engineer, but you can, in terms of like dealing with battery and not overcharging, you could do something like, if someone knows the circuitry for that, you can do something like changing out, pulling a direct connection to the, so there's leave the battery.
Yeah.
You could leave the control pins in, but you could just replace the actual power in from just straight from some kind of power in.
Yeah.
So it's viewing the battery as eternally on, and it has a percentage, it thinks it's real.
Yeah, I think the PCB that we're designing is kind of like that for some phones. Like this is beyond my understanding, but I think that was the idea. Like we want to take batteries out of these things because it's just a bad idea if you're using it for testing and not there personally. And then yeah, like we need to be able to power it obviously without the battery. So like some of the people who are on our team work as contractors for Qualcomm and stuff like that, so they kind of know their way around this hardware already and have input into like how to do that. So like that's my understanding, is that the thing we're making for this is gonna be able to do that as well. But if there's an existing system, yeah, I'd like to know more about that. Cause
I used to work with an engineer that would just DIY it every time. We would call them our infinite batteries, with quotes. Because he was doing it to laptop batteries, he would just go snip, snip, snip.
Yeah, I've done it to laptop batteries for another CI that I ran, and mean, it mostly worked, but.
It works and he even added, some banana clip that you can reattach if you need to charge the battery.
Oh, okay.
Because it still discharges over time, just very slowly.
Okay, yeah.
It's just much harder when the battery's like this big.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But ultimately, you could do some device that's not actually a battery and it just goes in. And all that stuff can go out of the phone eventually.
Yeah, I mean, like, if there was one standard battery size and 10 layout and stuff, maybe, but like, they're kind of all over the place.
Well, in the pin layout, there's only so many options they have there. Because it's ultimately what control pins, ground, power. Like,
yeah, but like the spacing and I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be cool if there was like a generic way to handle that.
But there's different chemistry, and what makes one battery charge makes another explode and fill the room with shrapnel.
It's not going to be that explosive. Just a bunch of toxic chemicals in the air.
147.
That's why you're building an automated CI thing so you don't put anyone in the room.
Nice pun.
It's
Yeah.
just.
Speaking of batteries, how's the battery life with PostmarketOS? Or is that a sensitive question?
I was hoping it would
Got it now.
It's not as good as you would get with like Android, for instance.
I figured, is it like?
Yeah, but
So
like,
Android,
is it
when the
like
phone is
acceptable?
new or over time when Android decides it wants to die and it
yeah,
starts
so
chewing
like
up?
the Pixel 3a, I don't know what they get new, but I get about a day worth of battery on that thing when I'm just like kind of lightly using it. The Librem 5, I got like CI system that I personally worked on when I was doing contract work at Valve for testing Mesa graphics drivers. Somebody else was like, it was their project. They're still working on it. We're paying this person to like make the CI system work for us. And then we have other people that we're paying to like figure out how to do, like we need to actually design a PCB to control these things remotely, right? Like power and like maybe button pushing and stuff, and provide serial output so we can debug when things go wrong in the CI. So we have some people who are designing a PCB for us to do that. We're gonna have it made and hook it up to phones and put this somewhere, you know, nice and safe. Yeah, the idea is we can do like pre-merge testing on real hardware before releases and before merging risky stuff.
Does PostmarketOS run on Steam Deck?
Yeah, it does run on the Steam Deck. Actually, like, I no longer have a desktop system. I have my laptop and then I have a Steam Deck that run PostmarketOS that I use for like, yeah, like it's my remote build system. I run Qemu on it sometimes. Yeah, it's fun.
I had a question about the higher level software for like a phone. Like, how is the touchscreen support and stuff that's going in some of these desktops? Is that ready for actual usage, or is it still? And I asked because I tried a few years ago on a Pixel Slate to get like KDE's touch, because they got a bunch of touch stuff that, you know, on desktop I was ignoring. And it was pure chaos, is what it was. There was a whole mess of issues, and I did not have the knowledge to dive into the C++ code for like the scaling in it. And it was a completely different and hot mess, whether you were on X or Wayland. It's like the bugs changed and morphed in weird ways. And so I was wondering if that's gotten any better, or if there's a different like on-screen keyboard setup that's maybe distro agnostic or desktop agnostic, because I know the Qt one has all kinds of issues.
Yeah.
To the point where it's like an epilepsy warning type thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, how's the state of that? Like, is it usable or?
Yeah. I mean, you can play around with this. This is a Pixel 3a running Phosh, which is a desktop environment that was created by Purism for the Librem 5, but we run it on whatever you want. And it uses a lot of like GNOME service stuff and applications.
Oh, okay.
Purism actually did a lot of investment in making GTK 3 and 4 like adaptive and touchscreen friendly.
I know they've got they created libhandy, right?
Yeah, which is now
like
libwida and
It's a little bit way to,
yeah.
Yeah, which is really nice. Yeah, if you want to play with this. Here,
Is it, how hard is it to like do control-y, you know, stuff you can do from a regular keyboard? One thing I ran into is this is on some Android SSH application.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to like, SSH into a screen session and then doing all the control A stuff to switch.
Yeah, okay, so there's,
Finding where the hell, how the way to do those.
yeah, there's a number of on-screen keyboards. There's one called Squeakboard, which was made by Purism for Flash.
Yeah, once it doesn't want to go away
That
when
can
it's
actually,
up.
like, there's different layouts. There's like your normal, I'm gonna write a message to grandma
yeah,
layout,
yeah,
and then there's like, I'm in a terminal, like I think when you run the terminal application, you
Yeah.
get like another top bar
Yeah,
which
yeah,
has
yeah.
escape,
But
control,
it doesn't want to
tab,
go
all this
away.
stuff.
But that's not the
Yeah,
end of the world, but when I.
There's also a keyboard from the GNOME folks,
The
which
screen
is
size is
slightly different. I think it has the
Qt
same
virtual keyboard
general
where you
idea though, where
know
there's
when
switch
you tap it,
layouts.
so you'd be tapping on it, and you think go
I
up here, so
don't
you
know
tap it in the middle and
how
nowhere.
it does,
And
but
then if you
not
were
really.
on a high resolution display,
Plasma,
and you change the global scaling,
Plasma
you would get all
mobile.
kinds of weird.
Yeah, they actually saw
Situation way later
I don't
where it would start
remember.
flashing.
Yeah, they probably
It
have.
was like,
They
you
have
can't keep track of its
origami
focus
or-
state, right?
I'm
So
not
it would go
probably not
away,
saying
then
that
come back and
correctly,
just
but-
repeat
What is
that
it?
over
I
and
think
over.
it's
That'd be
origami or
serious.
something.
Oh,
It was like.
Kurogami? I think it's, so it's.
I don't know, it started with K
they're-
obviously,
they're-
but they,
I haven't heard Kurogami, but.
I think that's their equivalent, like, that's their version of the libhandy libwida thing.
Yeah.
Which is like a toolkit that scales to the device size, so you get like, when you run an application on a wide screen or like a desktop, you get
You
the
wanna
desktop
try it,
version,
or
and then
you
when the
pass it
screen,
down?
gets smashed this way, then you get the mobile version and all the stuff, like reflows and.
That's the whole.
I don't think it's had nearly the same amount of uptake as libwida has though.
Yeah.
I haven't run
okay.
into, I don't think I've, maybe it blends in better, but I don't think I've run into any, Kurogami stuff on like my Plasma desktop.
Okay.
Is Weta, that's actually a touch-oriented library? Because I thought that was like the theme for KDE. It's also the name for the.
Kurogami?
No, Weta is like one of the
No, that's the GNOME stuff. That's the GNOME adapter stuff.
Okay. If it's, that's
Lib-
all I know is
Weta
that it's
is
the name
not-
of a theme. So I'm wondering if it's more than just the display theme.
It's like everything.
Oh, okay.
Everything GNOME is a Dwayne.
So the theme also has the same
It's
name.
also a font.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've been seeing it. I'm like, wait, there's more than. Okay.
They found a name they liked and they just used it.
Yeah,
There's
everywhere.
usually an word for everything.
Right at the
You
top
know,
of the
Oh,
alphabet.
and
Weta, yeah.
Weta is a Sanskrit
It's a
name.
library, it's a font, it's a theme, it's an icon set. It's,
We're not using it right
oh, really?
now. Inter.
Oh yeah, you're
No,
switched.
no,
didn't you?
48 changed to.
Yeah, to Inter.
I thought it changed to Weta.
No, it's Inter.
Okay. I know it changed because it broke a lot of stuff down.
I remember I seen it. I keep seeing it
Sorry.
in accessibility
Like, why
because
are the fonts all crazy?
they use the
Sorry.
widget thing for their windows. So it's like.
Yeah.
No, it's Inter.
Okay.
Or a special version of it.
Oh yeah, maybe we don't package it that.
Yeah.
Had to I don't know. I wasn't involved. I just saw the people
Yeah.
complaining.
Yeah, there it is.
I've got a question that kind of relates to architecture. It's a feature that maybe is imaginary and is impossible, but it's something that I would like to get, which is whatever you did, whatever you thought I told you to do, back up one step, back up one step. You know, the reason I can't use screen phones is my hands are too jittery and I enter more events than I can back out of. And I'm thinking for a lot of people in the world, you know, those of us with snow on the roof, or my friends with spastic tremor, that sort of thing, it would be nice if there was some way to tell the system, check, you know, set milestones in what you're doing, and being able to back up one milestone and having it tell you what milestone it's backing up to. And so that would help with accessibility for a lot of people. And so obviously right now you're just trying to